Could the war in Ukraine finally be coming to an end? After years of bloodshed, political tensions, and failed negotiations, a shocking new development has emerged. US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have just held a high-stakes, 90-minute phone call, sparking speculation that peace could finally be on the table. But is this truly the beginning of the end, or just another political game? Will Ukraine finally see peace, or are we witnessing a new chapter in global power struggles? This is Elite Global Watch, where we simplify the complex and reveal the hidden. Stay tuned, because in this video, we break down everything you need to know about these peace talks, what's really being discussed behind closed doors, and whether this deal is even possible. Background: for over 3 years, Ukraine has been a battleground. What started in 2022 as a Russian invasion quickly escalated into a devastating war. Thousands of lives lost, cities turned to rubble, and a geopolitical crisis that has reshaped global power. From the very beginning, the war sent shockwaves across the world. Western nations, led by the United States and NATO, responded with billions in military aid to Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia, despite facing harsh economic sanctions, pressed forward, determined to secure strategic territories. Over the years, multiple attempts at peace have failed. Ceasefires collapsed, negotiations stalled, and both sides remained unwilling to back down. While NATO and the West pushed for a full Russian withdrawal, Moscow demanded security guarantees and control over key regions. So what makes this time different? Donald Trump, back in power and taking an unorthodox approach to global diplomacy. Trump has wasted no time in reaching out to Putin, initiating a 90-minute phone call that could change everything. His goal? End the war fast. But how? And what does this mean for Ukraine and its president, Volodymyr Zelensky? With European leaders now considering a joint military force, NATO watching closely, and Russia sensing an opportunity, this so-called peace deal could have consequences far beyond what the world expects. So, is this the deal that finally ends the war, or just another political move? In the next section, we break down the details of the Trump-Putin negotiations and what's really at stake. The peace deal. What's being negotiated? In a stunning development, Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin held a 90-minute phone call, sparking speculation that a historic peace deal may be in the works. But what exactly did they discuss? And more importantly, will it actually work? Sources close to the talks suggest that 3 major issues were on the table: territorial compromises, a ceasefire agreement, and military withdrawals. But let's break this down. 1. Territorial compromises. Who gets what? One of the biggest sticking points? Land. Russia has held Crimea since 2014, and after the invasion in 2022, it expanded control over parts of eastern Ukraine. Now, Trump and Putin may be working on a deal where Ukraine recognizes Russian control over these areas, in exchange for an end to the war. This would be a huge win for Putin, but a devastating blow to Ukraine's sovereignty. Zelensky has repeatedly said that he will never give up Ukrainian land. So, would Ukraine even accept this deal? 2. Ceasefire agreement, a temporary or permanent end to war? Another key proposal? A full-scale ceasefire. If this deal moves forward, both sides would agree to immediate de-escalation, meaning no more bombings, no more military offensives, and no more casualties. But here's the catch: ceasefires have been signed before, and they've failed. Will this time be different, or is this just a pause before the fighting resumes? 3. Military withdrawals. What happens to Russian and NATO forces? A major part of these discussions is the withdrawal of military forces. This could mean Russia pulling back its troops from occupied Ukrainian cities, Ukraine stepping down some of its counter-offensives, NATO reducing military presence near Russian borders. This could be a critical moment, because NATO has been deeply involved in supporting Ukraine. If Trump negotiates a withdrawal of Western support, it could reshape the entire balance of power in Europe. How the world is reacting. And not everyone is happy. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been completely left out of these talks. He's calling for stronger European military support to counter Russia, fearing that this deal could mean Ukraine gets abandoned by the West. Meanwhile, NATO is divided. Some leaders see this as a way to finally end the war, while others fear it could give Putin exactly what he wants. If the US pushes for peace, will NATO follow, or will it stand by Ukraine no matter what? What this means for Ukraine and the world. If Trump and Putin's peace talks succeed, this could mark the beginning of the end of the Ukraine war. But at what cost? Not everyone is celebrating this potential deal, especially Ukraine. Ukraine's perspective. peace or betrayal? For Ukraine, these negotiations feel like a knife in the back. Zelensky has made it clear, he will not accept any deal that forces Ukraine to give up its land. But if Trump's plan involves recognizing Russian control over occupied territories, does Ukraine even have a choice? After years of fighting, Ukraine is exhausted, its economy is struggling, weapons supplies are running low, and Western support is fading. Many Ukrainians fear that if this deal goes through, their sacrifices will have been for nothing. But what happens if Ukraine refuses? If Trump pressures NATO to pull back military aid, could Ukraine stand alone against Russia? Russia's stance: a victory for Putin? Meanwhile, Putin is playing the long game. Russia has been under heavy economic sanctions, facing military losses, and struggling with international isolation. But if this peace deal gives him the territorial control he wants, without firing another shot, this could be a massive win for the Kremlin. Putin knows that the longer the war drags on, the more the West gets tired of supporting Ukraine. If he can negotiate a deal that keeps Russian control over key regions, he can claim victory without a costly military escalation. The US and NATO, a house divided. The question is, will the US and NATO support Trump's deal? NATO has been Ukraine's biggest lifeline, providing billions in military aid and weapons. But if Trump moves forward with peace talks, will he pressure NATO to step back? Many NATO leaders don't trust Russia and believe any peace deal must be on Ukraine's terms. Some fear that if NATO agrees to a weakened Ukraine, it could send a message that aggression pays off. Could this deal divide NATO and weaken Western unity? At the same time, there are many in the US who want an end to the war. With rising costs, economic strain, and public fatigue, some believe any peace deal is better than endless conflict. Will Trump push forward no matter what? Europe's reaction: a new military force? Zelensky isn't waiting for NATO's decision. In a shocking move, he has called for a European military force to counter Russia. This could mean a major shift in global security, with Europe taking defense into its own hands. But will European nations back this plan, or will they prefer Trump's peace deal? If Europe strengthens its military, could we see a new power bloc rising? A force that doesn't rely on the US or NATO? And what would that mean for the balance of power in the world? Will this deal actually work? So, after years of war, is this really the moment Ukraine finally sees peace? Or is this just another deal that falls apart like past attempts? Could this deal hold, or will it collapse? The biggest problem? Trust. Russia has broken agreements before, and Ukraine has no reason to believe this time will be different. Even if both sides sign a deal, who enforces it? Will Russian troops really withdraw, or is this just a pause before another offensive? Putin is known for playing the long game. If he agrees to peace now, is it because he truly wants an end to the war? Or because he's setting up for something bigger later? What experts are saying, real peace or just a show? Some believe this could be a real chance for peace, while others say it's political theater, a way for Trump to claim a victory while tensions remain. And what about the Ukrainian people? Even if Zelensky signs a deal, will Ukrainians accept it, or see it as surrender? Final thought: the world is watching. If this deal succeeds, Trump could be credited with ending one of the most devastating wars in recent history. But if it fails, Ukraine could face an even darker future. Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think this peace deal will actually bring real stability to Ukraine? Or is it doomed to collapse like the rest? Comment below, we're reading every response. And if you want to stay ahead of the biggest geopolitical stories shaping our world, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.